We have a question now from Stephen in Inchicore. This is quite a detailed question, so forgive me if I have to read my notes a little bit for this one. So Stephen asks, how will the Commission assist member state governments with the management of the enormous debt burdens that they are taking on in the context of the pandemic? Given that the transfer of payments will likely remain high for a while, and tax receipts obviously will be well below projections. And for clarity, he says, I'm referring to debt incurred in the markets at present, not any future Eurobonds or similar. So quite a meaty question there.
Yeah, no, it's a serious question, a good question. I think, as I said, the approach adopted from the beginning has been around lowering, with the ECB, obviously an independent body, but, discussions with the Christine Lagarde and others and presidents and leaders, to have a kind of a coherent approach to the challenges have obviously been present. So I think the actions, for example, of ECB, which has an impact of lowering borrowing costs very significantly. So this, very materially reduces the debt burden on Ireland and all member states then, because basically the same amount of capital you're borrowing, the repayments is much lighter. So that has a very positive impact. The initiatives that I mentioned earlier in the Next Generation EU, the Recovery, the Resilience Facility, the fact that this now includes a very, very significant amount of grants from the EU to countries that will be, how they will spend that and to what use that will be put will be, discussed and agreed in conjunction between the member states and the Commission. But this will, again, have a real material impact in regions and sectors. So any money that's received in grants won't have to be borrowed. So this will have a very, very significant effect on reducing the borrowing needs of countries and the debt that will have to be repaid afterwards. And so I think, the different programs that are being put in place to support, whether it's Invest EU through support to employment benefits, basically providing member states with access to programs and funds, whether it's on research and innovation, Horizon 2020, the current program will be, developed and improved even going forward. So I think the whole range of supports that are available at EU level to member states will really have the impact of less will have to be borrowed. Whatever has to be borrowed will be borrowed at cheaper rates. And there has been the general escape clause. So this kind of buffer, if you like, this breathing space has been given to member states that, deal with the crisis, deal with the effects of the crisis now. And then, when normal growth returns to the economy, then, we can look about restoring fiscal rules and prudence and getting back to the fiscal responsibility that will always be needed going forward.
So I suppose what you can say to Stephen is that the EU is doing its best to reduce the need for borrowing where possible, and where it isn't necessary, that the rates won't be as high as maybe in the past. So that's
absolutely. Yeah. And I think if you add them all up together, it's a very significant saving. So I think this matters. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on now to a very controversial topic in Ireland that comes up every so often. Certainly causes controversy around Europe as well. And this also comes from a Europe Direct user here in Blanchardstown. So there's many multinational companies based in Ireland and their employees have concerns about the EU's approach to harmonising corporate tax rates. And this comes up frequently. How do you see this playing out in the years to come?
I think, I think there is a general recognition around corporate tax that the current international tax rules that have been in place for, I think, nearly a century now at this stage, that they're not really any longer, fit for purpose in the kind of globalized digital world in which we operate, that there's a need to change, to reform, to do things better. I think underpinning the action from the EU perspective has been very much a sense of fairness. There's a need to be fair to companies, fair to countries, but also fair to taxpayers. So I think fairness that everybody, is really, we call it now the fair taxation agenda, because that's, the approach we see on it. But I think it's important to clarify, because indeed in your question, I think it mentioned tax rates. So there's no proposal from the EU to harmonise tax rates across Europe. We're not looking at the rates. it's different things around, whatever the tax and where it's captured and so on. But there's no proposals from the EU to change the tax rate, so that can be reassuring. I know the attachment of Ireland to the 12.5% rate. It's an important factor in terms of the offer that Ireland has, but of course there are many other attractions and reasons why multinationals set up here and why they're thriving here. So, I think they will continue to thrive and grow in Ireland, regardless of corporate tax changes. I think maybe important to mention as well. Indeed, the objective is to look at this at an international level. So it's not just the EU in a bubble looking at corporate tax. This has been internationally recognised as a need to do things better, to look and see how we can make improvements. So the objective is certainly to do it at a global level, international level, in the OECD, in other bodies as well, to try and get a consensus to bring everybody along to see how best to approach this. Not always easy. Obviously, we've seen with the OECD, the US have taken some steps recently, which are not, which may be a little bit problematic in terms of getting agreement there. I mean, things change. We'll see how it evolves, how it develops in coming months. But if there isn't any progress, if there's nothing really happening at international level, then the problem won't go away. So I think there will always be a need to consider, and I think the EU will have to continue to consider how best to deal with this. So the hope and the aim is to get an agreement at international level. If that's not possible, we have to see at European level what we can do that.
So, again, in summary, the rates themselves, you can see, a lot of people are quite wedded to the 12.5%. You see that not changing, but maybe other changes being made but the rate itself will stay the same.
Yes, I think your question indeed was on the rate, so there's no proposals to change that at the moment. But I think there's no surprise the corporate tax agenda is out there. Something needs to be done. I think everybody agrees. Obviously, the devil is always in the detail. What do you do? But fairness is the guiding principle that we try and bear in mind from the EU perspective. So I think to be fair to companies that have established expectations, to be fair to countries that will be affected, some more than others. So Ireland is clearly in that bracket of being more affected by changes than some other countries. But then fair to taxpayers as well. Then that the burden of I don't like actually the word tax burden, but that the contributions from taxpayers. Everybody bears a fair share, including companies.
Okay, and we're going to move on now to the final question, and this goes back to a point you kind of touched on a little bit earlier when you spoke about the impact on some of the more vulnerable people in society. So again, from somebody in Dublin, a citizen in Dublin, has asked that the impact of COVID-19 has been very severe on certain more vulnerable socio-economic groups. What has been done at an EU level to provide support, particularly for these groups?
Indeed, good question again. I think this has been at the forefront of considerations from the beginning. When the measures were being considered, were being looked at around the escape clause, when the whole program was being designed, the initial one in April for workers, for different sectors, and then the long-term Next Generation EU program, was really to embed in that particular measures to looking after the most vulnerable in society, to ensure that whatever scars are left on the economy, that nobody is left behind, and that the rebound, everybody kind of has the same chance to recover and rebound from the most adverse effects. So I think this has been, a guiding principle, not just in this commission, but in previous commissions. I've been here since 2014 in Dublin. We had President Juncker previously. Very, very strong on the social aspect of things. We have Nicholas Schmidt, the new commissioner on social affairs. He actually did a webinar here in Dublin with the IAA some weeks ago, outlining in detail all the different measures that are there. I think maybe a couple of, maybe the youth issues around, because I'm particularly concerned that, the young people at risk of being more adversely affected by the current crisis, maybe than some of those that are retired and are approaching retirement and have built up whatever capital and so on, and that the young people, we need to be careful that the crisis doesn't disproportionately affect them. So the EU has a youth guarantee initiative, which is going to be beefed up, which is going to be improved and increased in the next long-term budget. So this really gives young people access to training, apprenticeships, different schemes, job schemes. So there's a real focus on that. People with disabilities is always a special feature as well of the approach taken at the Commission level. Where I should say as well, maybe we here in this job in Dublin, we meet a lot with the social sector. Just on Monday, we had a meeting like this over Zoom with Social Justice Ireland. We have met recently with the European Anti-Poverty Network, people based here. There's an alliance of different stakeholders and groups we meet with regularly in the context of the European semester. So all the different segments of society that are most vulnerable, most affected, long-term unemployed. Ireland has an issue with low work intensity, so there are some households that have intergenerational unemployment, so long-term unemployment of special needs. You have then the European Social Fund, which has been a big, supporter of Ireland and Europe over the decades, really now as such. So this continues to challenge even like food cloud into, food supports for the most needy. Maybe as well, it's useful to mention the regional dimension, the regional impact of all of this. I think in the European semester recently, and regional policy has been at the heart of European agenda for generations, and Ireland has benefited more than most from that policy. Cohesion funding, so massive, billions and billions that have been, put into the most exposed and the regions that needed it most, particularly in Ireland, the Midlands, the West, the Northwest, and so on. So I think that regional dimension is very much at the heart of the proposals as well, to make sure that, if there's a rebound, it's not just in the capital cities, whatever, that, there is ways and means to encourage development in the regions as well. So I think with all these things coming together, the social, the most vulnerable are very much at the forefront, genuinely, of people's thinking and consideration. So the aim is really to get a rebound and a recovery where nobody is left behind. That's certainly
that's obviously very, very important, and it's interesting that you mentioned regional policy, because in a few minutes I'm going to be connecting with Jerry Kiley, of course, who's the head of representation. And that's okay. It. And some of the questions for Jerry are related to regional policy, so that'll be interesting. Okay. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much, Patrick. That was incredibly informative. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure the people watching these videos are going to learn a lot. There was a lot of information there, a lot of reassurance there as well. I think that things are the EU is grasping the nettle when it comes to what has to be done to deal with the pandemic itself, and then the aftermath of that. So thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
Thanks for the questions. I mean, they're tough questions indeed. But thanks for the people for submitting them, and pleasure to engage. And just to let everyone know, we're here. We're not going anywhere. So I'm still here for a while longer. So our office is in Dublin, but we do get around the place. So through the edX yourselves and through Roman and colleagues in the offices in Dublin. So we're just at the end of a phone or an email. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And we're here to help.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, obviously, there's a network of Europe Direct information centres around Ireland. We're still open for business as well. We're often at home. I'm in my 6-year-old child's bedroom at the moment, setting up a studio. We do what we can, but we're open for business. We're there to answer your queries, and so please feel free to get in touch with your local EDIC centre, your Europe Direct centre, and we'll do our best to help you. So at that, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Patrick.
All right. Thanks, Barry. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.